was the ahistoricism of the future gazing that this administration and others have traditionally done. This is a deal that's happened before. We're reverting to type. And I'll play on Steve's point about focus on killing. The new strategy appears to be focus on killing on steroids. And if you look about what's next, what I see coming out of the administration as we look at the future of military structuring programs is this so-called pivot to Asia, which to me is a frantic attempt to find a nail for the air-sea battle hammer. You know, anytime anyone tells you that it's not about the money, it's about the money. And anytime anybody tells you that it's not about China, it's about China. And the frantic disabusal of this administration is saying, no, 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 as the Secretary of Defense rings China, like Truman ring the Soviet Union in these trips and saying, no, 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 it's not about China. Someone needs to talk to the Chinese about that because they certainly think it is. The other silly declaration is this is a joint future strategy that's focused around all the services. No, it's not. Just take a look at the latest apology in Armed Forces Journal by an Air Force and a Navy colonel, or captain and colonels, I believe, where there was a brief head nod towards jointness and all the rest was about whacking the Chinese with missiles and bombers. Really what this does, I'm afraid, is that we're reverting to type. You know, pick your post-war strategies, whether it's Eisenhower's new book or the global reach in the 1970s, the RMA in the 1990s, the gift of time in the late 90s. It's just the typical reversal of the American national security strategy back to its default position, which is revulsion, having just fought a manpower-intensive war and a commitment to fight a techno-centric war. And simply they're trying, now that we're trying to rebuild the hammer, we're desperately trying to find a nail. And the only one that comes to mind that's politically acceptable is China. To John's point earlier about when he was on C-SPAN, he said that both Republicans and Democrats, conservative and liberals, all said the first thing we've got to do is not do this. So this is simply a way to craft a national security strategy that focuses on a sweet spot, which is winning wars with technology and firepower. And it's been accelerated, to my mind, by several recent events. First was the crushing of Libya by air power. Second was this terrorist plinking campaign with drones that Steve just talked about, which is, I think, deceptively, it appears to be deceptively successful. And of course, the recent leaked cyber campaign against Iran. You stack all these up, and to a populace in an election year desperate to find a new way to pivot, this is the new way to pivot, because everybody knows we're going to fight China. They're not going to fight China. The Chinese know that. But this is a great way to restart the national security strategy, focus on technology, and focus on an enemy that everybody knows that we're not going to fight. So, what does this mean? Well, it means that, back to Steve's point about clauses, that the ends determine the means. This is exactly what Vonda just said. That when Barbara rolls over to George and says we can't let these people suffer anymore, or when we watch the news media about Syria and Michelle rolls over to Iraq and says we can't suffer this anymore, we're going to go to war. And we're going to go to war with an unexpected outcome because we don't understand the ends and we restrict the means. So, you know, Truman couldn't find Korea on a map before the 20th of June, 1950. Johnson had no idea we'd suffer 61,000 dead. And I could go on, and who knew that we'd be fighting a decade of war after 9/11. So what we have, I think, is a couple of problems. Technocentric approach to national security strategy, and this obsession with trying to put everything in neat bundles called scenarios. It doesn't work. We have a terrible record for picking the time, the place, the circumstances, and most specifically, the enemy. So, okay, Bob, now that you've disabused the national security strategy, how do we do it? I would suggest to you, back to my point with Michael in these warring op-eds, that we have to take, dare I say it, more of a long-term historical approach to our national security strategy. That in fact, and it should be driven not by where our ends are, but frankly, what our enemies' ends are. Where's the consistency in all of this? The consistency is wherever the enemy has approached us as we have lived through the American era of warfare. Whoever the enemy has been, from high end in Korea, middle end in Vietnam, low end in Iraq and Afghanistan, our enemies have pursued exactly the same national security strategy from Lin Piao to Mao Zedong to Saddam Hussein and Ho Chi Minh. That is to limit the effectiveness of American firepower, to fight a non-technical war that reduces the options of America's technocentric style of warfare, at the operational level, to hide, to go to ground, to use disinformation as a weapon, and propaganda as a defensive strategy, with the outcome of winning by not losing and forcing us to get tired of it and go home. And that has been the way we fought wars, major wars, every time since the end of World War II. So how do you do it? Well, you build a national security strategy, I believe, around the enemy's capabilities, not your own. That you focus force structures in the future around a strategy that assumes we will do again what we've done in the past. Now, that runs counter to what we're going to do, and we're going to do it anyway. Just as we built B-52s, we're going to build BXs in the decade. And whoever we face in the future, the First Lady rolls over to the President and says, we have to help those people. We're going to go to war with what we have, and it's going to be inadequate, and soldiers and Marines are going to die needlessly, and bombers are going to orbit helplessly over the battlefield seeking to intrude very effectively because the enemy knows what he's doing. I would suggest to you that if you want to view a possible national security strategy that might work, that you read Frank Hoffman and Dave Johnson's work on hybrid warfare. It comes the closest to my mind to understanding the enemy's future capabilities in its purest and most abstract form, and it's certainly understandable to the men in the street. This idea of going back to the RMA in order to kill from a distance bloodlessly, I think is patently absurd. Not that I have strong feelings on it, but I've done it 5 times.
Thank you very much.